Sigma INFJ, the lone wolf, the one who needs no one, independent, self-sufficient, comfortable in solitude. If you're watching this, you've probably heard about it before and maybe even recognize yourself in it. But here's what the Sigma narrative doesn't tell you. Sigma is not a personality type. It's only a stage in the evolution of INFJs. There's something beyond it, an evolution most never reach because they mistake the cocoon for the butterfly. Want to know the entire story? Let's begin. To understand where you're going, we need to understand where you've been. Because the Sigma INFJ didn't just appear out of nowhere. This identity, this withdrawal, this fortress you built in solitude, it came from somewhere. It was a response, a survival mechanism, a necessary evolution. And to move beyond Sigma, to reach what I call sovereign, you need to see the full arc, the complete journey. It has 3 stages. First, the wound, what broke that caused you to withdraw. Second, Sigma, the withdrawal itself, what it gave you, what it saved you from, and where it stops working. Third, sovereign, the integration, the evolution beyond isolation, the place where most INFJs never reach because they don't realize there's anything beyond Sigma. Today, we're walking through all 3, so you can see exactly where you are and exactly where you're going. Let's start at the beginning, the wound. First, let's talk about the wound. Because before there was Sigma, before there was withdrawal, there was something that broke. And for the INFJ, that wound has a name, emotional enmeshment. Let me explain what I mean. You have introverted intuition paired with extraverted feeling, which means you don't just observe emotions, you absorb them. You feel what others feel, often before they feel it themselves. You read the room like it's written in your native language. You know what people need, what they're hiding, what they're afraid to say. And when you were young, this felt like a gift. You were the one people came to, the emotional translator, the one who could hold space for everyone's pain, the empath, the healer, the one who understood. But here's what no one told you. You weren't just holding space. You were absorbing the emotional atmosphere as if it were your own. Someone else's anxiety became your anxiety. Their sadness became your sadness. Their unspoken needs became your responsibility. And you didn't know where they ended. And you began. This is emotional enmeshment. And for the INFJ, it's not just exhausting, it's identity eroding. Because you started to believe that your value came from how well you could attune to others. That love meant merging. That connection meant losing yourself. You became a mirror, a vessel, a space holder, but never just yourself. And then one day, something snapped. Maybe it was betrayal. Someone you gave everything to who didn't see you at all. Maybe it was exhaustion. The realization that you'd been running on empty for years. Maybe it was clarity. The sudden, painful understanding that you'd been living everyone's life but your own. The wound is this. You gave yourself away believing that's what love required, and the world took, and took, and took. So you withdrew. This is the INFJ's Sigma phase. And it looks different than other types because for you, withdrawal isn't just physical. It's energetic, emotional. You didn't just step back from social obligations. You built walls around your extraverted feeling. You stopped absorbing. You stopped attuning. You stopped making yourself available to every emotional frequency in the room, and for the first time in your life, you felt quiet inside. This is what INFJ Sigma looks like. You cut contact with energy vampires. You stopped explaining yourself. You learned to say no without guilt, or at least you tried. You became selective, skeptical, guarded. You stopped trying to fix people. You stopped carrying others' emotional burdens as if they were yours. You disappeared into your inner world, your introverted intuition landscape, where no one could reach you unless you allowed it. And in that solitude, something happened. You started to feel your own feelings. Not someone else's anxiety, not someone else's sadness, yours. You started to hear your own voice, not the voice that said what others needed to hear, but the voice that spoke your truth. You started to remember who you were before you learned to shapeshift for love. Sigma saved you. It gave you the distance to see what had been happening. You'd been living with your extraverted feeling door wide open, and the world had walked in and made itself at home. Sigma taught you to close the door, to choose who gets access, to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. This withdrawal was necessary. It was survival. It was the reset button you desperately needed. But here's where many INFJs get stuck. You learn to close the door, and then you lock it. You learn to protect your energy, and then you hoard it. You learn that you don't need others to be whole, and then you start to believe you shouldn't need others at all. The wound tells you connection equals enmeshment, so Sigma tells you disconnection equals freedom. But neither is true, and this is where sovereign begins. So what is sovereign for the INFJ? Sovereign is extraverted feeling mastery, not extraverted feeling suppression, not extraverted feeling avoidance. Mastery. Let me be clear about what this means. During your Sigma withdrawal, you built a map. You learned which people drain you and which don't. You learned what healthy boundaries actually look like. You learned the difference between empathy and absorption. You learned that you can care without carrying. You learned that you can attune without merging. This is the map. And sovereign is what happens when you take that map and re-enter the world. Not as the person you were before, not as the emotional sponge, not as the selfless caretaker, but as someone who knows how to modulate their extraverted feeling, to turn it on and off intentionally, to deploy it strategically. Sovereign INFJ means you can feel into a room and choose whether to engage with what you feel. You can sense someone's pain and decide whether it's yours to hold. You can offer support without losing yourself in the process. You can connect deeply and still come home to yourself intact. This is the difference. Sigma INFJ says I have to stay away to stay whole. Sovereign INFJ says I can engage without losing myself because I know how to regulate my extraverted feeling. Here's what this looks like in practice. You enter a social situation. Your extraverted feeling reads the room immediately. You feel the tension, the unspoken dynamics, the emotional undercurrents. But instead of automatically absorbing it, you pause. You ask yourself, is this mine? Do I need to engage with this? Is this person ready for what I see? Does this person matter to me? To which level? Does this serve my vision, my energy, my sovereignty? And based on that discernment, you choose. Sometimes you attune. You offer insight, support, presence, because your vision calls for it, because the connection is genuine, because it aligns with what you're building. Sometimes you shield. You feel it, acknowledge it, and let it pass through without sticking. You stay present but bounced. You care without carrying. And sometimes you withdraw, not out of fear, not out of wound, but because your energy is better spent elsewhere, because you need to return to your inner world to create, to integrate, to recharge. And there's no guilt, because you know you're not abandoning anyone. You're honoring the rhythm that allows you to show up as your whole self when it matters. Because you understand this isn't Sigma, this is sovereignty with introversion intact. You're still an INFJ. You still need solitude to process, to metabolize experience, to regulate your energy. That doesn't go away. That's not something to fix. But in sovereign stage, that withdrawal serves a larger vision. It's not permanent isolation. It's rhythmic regeneration. You withdraw to digest what you've experienced, to create what you're building, to prepare for the next strategic engagement. Sigma withdrawal is permanent. You're hiding. You've made isolation your identity. Sovereign withdrawal is rhythmic. You're metabolizing. You're orchestrating your energy within a bigger vision. You retreat when depth is needed. You engage when connection serves your path. The difference isn't that you stop needing solitude. The difference is that solitude becomes a tool, not a prison. Even in sovereignty, you'll still need the cave. The difference is you're not hiding there anymore. You're preparing, you're integrating, you're creating. The cave becomes your studio, not your prison. You withdraw to build what you'll bring back to the world. This is sovereign extraverted feeling. Not the extraverted feeling that gives everything to everyone. Not the extraverted feeling that shuts down to survive. But the extraverted feeling that flows intentionally, that serves your vision, that enhances connection without eroding identity. You've learned the most important lesson. Your empathy is not a resource for others to extract. It's a gift you choose to give, and that choice makes all the difference. Now you might be thinking, this sounds beautiful. But how do I actually get there? What's stopping me from becoming sovereign right now? Stay with me. Because what I'm about to share is the reason most INFJs never make it past Sigma. Let's talk about what blocks INFJs from reaching sovereign. Because knowing the path isn't the same as walking it. The biggest block is the guilt. INFJs are conditioned to believe that having boundaries is selfish. That saying no is cruel. That protecting your energy is cold. The voice in your head says if I don't help them, who will? If I close the door, am I a bad person? If I choose myself, does that make me heartless? This is the wound speaking, and sovereign means learning to distinguish between your truth and your conditioning. Here's the reframe. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. Saying no to what drains you is saying yes to what sustains you. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's the only way you can give from a full cup instead of an empty one. You're not responsible for everyone's emotional experience. You're responsible for your own integrity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people sit with their own feelings instead of rescuing them from the discomfort. The second block is the fear of losing your identity. Because for so long, your identity was empath, healer, the one who understands. If you stop being that, who are you? This is where introverted intuition comes in, your dominant function, the part of you that sees patterns, envisions futures, builds internal frameworks. Sovereign INFJ means letting introverted intuition lead and extraverted feeling follow. Not the other way around. Your vision comes first. Your inner knowing comes first. Your path comes first. And extraverted feeling becomes the tool that helps you manifest that vision, not the master that dictates your every move. You're not losing your empathy. You're integrating it. You're not becoming cold. You're becoming whole. You're not abandoning your gifts. You're finally learning to wield them with intention. Here's what sovereign INFJ integration actually requires. First, shadow work around your extraverted feeling. Examining why you believed love meant self-erasure. Healing the part of you that equated your worth with your usefulness to others. Learning to sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood when you set boundaries. But extraverted feeling mastery cannot happen without developing your introverted thinking, your tertiary function. This is your internal logic system. Introverted thinking gives you the discernment to know when extraverted feeling is serving you and when it's running the show. Introverted thinking is the question that interrupts the automatic empathy. Is this mine? Do I need to carry this? Does this align with my vision? Without introverted thinking, extraverted feeling is a fire hose. With introverted thinking, extraverted feeling becomes a precision tool. You cannot master extraverted feeling without introverted thinking. Because introverted thinking is your filter. Introverted thinking is the pause between feeling and responding. Introverted thinking asks the logical questions that extraverted feeling alone cannot ask. Is this person safe? Is this relationship reciprocal? Does this connection serve my path? Introverted thinking creates the space where sovereignty lives. Extraverted feeling without introverted thinking is absorption. Extraverted feeling with introverted thinking is choice. Then, there's extraverted sensing, your inferior function. Learning to be present in your body, in the physical moment, instead of constantly scanning for emotional data. This grounds you. It anchors you in yourself instead of in others' feelings. Here are 3 practical ways to develop this. First, the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. When you're absorbing too much, pause. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. Second, physical anchoring before social situations. Press your feet into the ground, feel your body's weight, touch something with texture. Third, movement as regulation. When you're stuck in analysis, walk, stretch, move. These aren't just exercises, they're tools for sovereignty. Extraverted sensing integration means taking action instead of endlessly processing. It means being here now in your body, not lost in the emotional atmosphere. Extraverted sensing pulls you out of the introverted intuition and introverted thinking loop, where you're endlessly analyzing patterns and emotions, but never actually moving. Extraverted sensing says do something, feel something physical. Be present with what's actually happening, not just what you intuit or think about it. This is embodiment. This is what turns insight into action. The integration is this. Introverted intuition vision leads, your inner knowing, your pattern recognition, your depth. Extraverted feeling enhances it when chosen. You attune, you connect, you offer your gift. But only when introverted thinking gives you permission, only when the logic checks out, only when it serves your vision. And extraverted sensing grounds it all in action, in presence, in the body, in the real, messy, beautiful now. This is wholeness, not one function dominating, but all 4 working together. Introverted intuition sees the vision. Introverted thinking discerns what serves it. Extraverted feeling connects when aligned. Extraverted sensing makes it real. Let's talk about relationships as a sovereign INFJ, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Stay with me. In Sigma phase, you probably cut people off, maybe harshly, maybe quietly, but you learned that distance was safer than enmeshment. Sovereign doesn't mean going back to old patterns, it means building new ones. You become selective. Not everyone gets access to your depth. Not everyone gets to know the real you. And that's not coldness, that's sovereignty. You look for reciprocity, not people who take your empathy for granted, but people who see you, meet you, match your energy. You communicate clearly, not hinting, not hoping they'll intuit your needs, but stating them directly. This is your introverted thinking development. I need space right now. This doesn't work for me. I can't carry this for you. Clear, direct, unapologetic. You honor the rhythm. Sometimes you're deeply present. Sometimes you need to withdraw. And the right people understand this. They don't take it personally. They don't demand constant access. They trust the rhythm. They trust that your withdrawal isn't rejection. It's regeneration. And you give from overflow, not from depletion. When you show up for someone, it's because you want to. Because you have the energy. Because it aligns with your values. Not because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Here's the vision. Sovereign INFJ is someone who moves through the world with quiet authority. They can read the room, but they're not controlled by it. They can offer profound insight, but they don't need to. They can be alone without loneliness and connected without losing themselves. They build their life around their introverted intuition vision, and they use extraverted feeling to enhance that vision, not to escape it. They've integrated the lesson. Empathy is a superpower, but only when you're empathetic with yourself first. Now, before we close, I need to tell you something about this journey. It's not linear. You won't flip a switch and suddenly become sovereign. You'll try opening up and get burned. You'll retreat too far and feel stuck again. You'll think you've mastered your extraverted feeling, and then someone will trigger the old wound, and you'll want to lock the door forever. You'll overcorrect. You'll stumble. You'll have moments where you wonder if Sigma was safer after all. This is normal. This is the path. Integration isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You'll revisit the same lessons at deeper levels, the same triggers, the same fears. But each time, you'll have more awareness, more tools, more discernment, more sovereignty. There will be trials. There will be failures. Someone you trusted will take advantage of your openness, and you'll question everything. You'll have to recalibrate your boundaries, adjust your map, learn new distinctions between genuine connection and energy vampires in disguise. This doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're learning. Every mistake is data. Every stumble is refinement. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be sovereign. And sovereignty is built through trial, error, and recalibration. So be patient with yourself. Be compassionate with the process. You're not going backwards when you retreat after getting hurt. You're integrating new information. You're updating your map. This is how evolution works. If you're an INFJ watching this and you're somewhere on this path, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Are you in Sigma right now? Are you trying to move towards sovereign? What's the hardest part for you? This community is full of people walking the same path. Your story matters. And if this resonated, if something shifted inside you, hit that subscribe button. Because this is just the beginning. There's more coming on the INTJ path, the INFP evolution, the INTP journey, and the deeper work of integration for all types. Don't miss it. So here's what's next. You understand the INFJ path now? Wound, withdrawal, integration. But understanding isn't the same as embodying. If you're ready to move from Sigma to sovereign, you need to start asking different questions. Not how do I protect myself from others, but how do I stay whole while engaging with others? Not how do I avoid being drained, but how do I regulate my extraverted feelings so I can choose when to give? Not am I safe, but am I sovereign? This is the work, and it's not easy, because it requires you to trust yourself in a way you never have before, to believe that you can be open without being overwhelmed, to know that you can care without carrying, to remember that your empathy is a gift, not a curse, not a trap, a gift, and sovereign means learning when to give it and when to keep it for yourself. Sigma taught you to survive the wound. Sovereign teaches you to alchemize it, to take the very thing that broke you, your capacity to feel everything, and turn it into your greatest strength, not by suppressing it, not by avoiding it, but by mastering it. This is the INFJ evolution. From emotional sponge to emotional sovereign, from giving yourself away to giving from your wholeness, from surviving in isolation to thriving in rhythm. If you're an INFJ watching this and something inside you just shifted, good, that means you're ready. Sigma was the withdrawal. Sovereign is the return, not to who you were, but to who you're becoming. Welcome home.